You've heard of fight, flight, or freeze, but there's another survival response many people live in without even realizing it. It's called fawn. If you've ever felt trapped between keeping the peace and keeping yourself, we'll talk about why, and we'll explore the difference between healthy compromise and self-abandonment, so you can begin reconnecting to your own power. Hey friend, how's your day going? I'm so happy you're here. I think today's topic is something so many people can relate to. Have you ever said yes to something not because you really wanted to, but because you didn't want someone else to feel bad? A while back, I worked with a client who was going through exactly this struggle. She told me that out of a need for approval, she'd quieted her own needs and had been a people pleaser for most of her life. She said, "I'm not even sure what I want anymore. I second guess myself anytime my thoughts are different than others. And without a trust for myself, I think I must be wrong." And then she went on to say that she wanted to own her power by being okay with feeling her feelings, even if they didn't make others happy. What she was describing wasn't just a mindset habit. It was a survival response deeply wired into her nervous system. This newer term, called the fawn response, was added to the classic survival responses, fight, flight, freeze, by psychotherapist Pete Walker in 2013. The fawn response typically develops in childhood when we find ourselves in environments where our authentic emotions aren't really safe to express. Like maybe we had a parent with unpredictable moods, or maybe expressing certain feelings resulted in rejection or withdrawal of love. Sometimes we simply observed the adults around us sacrificing their needs to keep the peace, and we learned by example. You know, something I've noticed after working with thousands of clients and training practitioners is a lot of people who struggle with people-pleasing or fawning are naturally intuitive or empathic. Not all of them experienced major trauma, but they developed an extraordinary ability to read a room. They learned early on to notice the smallest shifts, a slight lift of an eyebrow, a change in tone, because picking up on subtle emotional cues felt necessary for their safety. They've been honing those intuitive skills ever since. And what's fascinating is that often, even though they're highly intuitive, many of them don't fully trust their own inner voice. They're so used to tuning into others that they forget how to tune into themselves. Healing work like SimplyAlign helps reconnect that thread. So intuition isn't just about reading other people, it becomes about trusting yourself again too. The fawn response is when we learn that the safest way to avoid hurt, conflict, or rejection is to please, accommodate, and merge with others' needs. It's actually a brilliant survival skill when you're young, but as adults, it can leave us feeling lost, unsure, and disconnected from ourselves. And here's something important I've come to understand. There's a big difference between being a peacekeeper and being a peacemaker. A peacekeeper is someone who maintains peace at all costs, usually at a cost to themselves. That's the fawning response in action. They sacrifice their own needs, silence their voice, and abandon their truth just to avoid rocking the boat. A peacemaker, on the other hand, creates genuine harmony through healthy boundaries. They understand that real peace doesn't come from suppressing the truth, it comes from honoring it with compassion and clarity. I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with compromise, consideration, and putting others' needs before your own. In fact, I believe our culture has swung too far toward the me-first thinking. Some of life's greatest joys and blessings come from serving others and being part of something bigger than ourselves. But the difference is in the motivation and the cost. When we choose to accommodate from a place of strength and genuine care, that is a beautiful thing. When we feel like we have no choice but to accommodate because we're afraid of rejection or conflict, that's fawning. The first is very expansive, and the second feels very contracted. I've been in business for over 22 years now, and I've learned a lot personally and professionally, hopefully gaining some hard-earned wisdom along the way. But I still remember vividly how this pattern showed up in my own life. In the early days of my business, I hired a business consultant. She knew her stuff and was good, and we had worked together for about a year. And when it came time to re-sign for another 6 months, even though I felt I didn't really need it at that time, and it was a significant commitment, I ended up signing up again after a conversation with her. Why? Well, yes, she was very good at sales conversations, but what I felt most strongly was a deep sense of responsibility for someone else's feelings. I didn't want to disappoint her. I didn't want her to feel bad. I didn't want her to think that she hadn't done a good job and I didn't want to stay with her. I made her emotional experience more important than my own inner knowing. Oh, wait, let me rephrase that. I let my perception of her possible emotional experience become more important than my own inner knowing. That's one of the sneaky ways people-pleasing can show up, not just as a fear of rejection, but as a desire to manage someone else's emotions so they don't have to feel uncomfortable. And when we do that, when we carry responsibility for someone else's feelings, we start abandoning our own. We disconnect from what we really know, really want, really feel, because we're trying to keep someone else comfortable instead. I know, it's cuckoo. It doesn't just cost us emotionally, it can cost us our clarity, our confidence, our peace, and sometimes it can even cost us our time, our energy, and yes, our money. The good news is that experience was a great lesson. It taught me something very important. It taught me to trust my own knowing. It taught me to recognize when I was over-caring or taking on responsibility for what I thought was someone else's emotions. And it taught me that it's okay to say no, even if someone else feels disappointed, because protecting my peace matters too. And honestly, that tendency to prioritize other people's feelings over our own shows up in bigger life decisions too. I know more than one woman who admitted she got married not because she truly wanted to at the time, but because she didn't want to break the groom's heart. She didn't want to break his heart or disappoint her parents after they had spent so much money and made all these plans for the wedding, or she didn't want to let down his family who were already so invested and excited. That's people-pleasing on a much deeper level. And it's exactly why this kind of healing work matters so much, because the cost of abandoning ourselves adds up, sometimes in huge life-altering ways. Earlier, I shared about my client who had spent years people-pleasing at the expense of her own needs. When we worked together using SimplyAlign, we helped her gently release some of the old emotional imprints tied to that survival pattern. The messages that said, "You're only safe if you make everyone else happy," started to loosen. She began to reconnect to her own inner voice, her own wisdom. She didn't have to become harsh or selfish. She just started honoring her own feelings, even when they didn't match what others wanted. One of the things she realized, and this was so beautiful to see, was that part of owning her power meant learning healthy boundaries. And real boundaries are not about telling other people what they can or can't do. They're about clearly and kindly communicating how you will respond. For example, it's not, "You can't talk to me that way." It's, "If I'm spoken to that way, I'll choose to step away from the conversation." Boundaries aren't punishments. They're just the natural, loving consequences of honoring your own well-being. Learning that helped her trust herself even more because she realized she didn't have to control other people's emotions or behavior to feel safe anymore. She could simply stay connected to her truth and make healthy choices for herself, which in turn helped everyone else around her. That's what real freedom looks like. If you're realizing that people-pleasing is a pattern for you too, and you're wondering where to even start, here are 5 simple but powerful steps you can begin taking right now to start shifting out of it. Number 1, pause before you say yes. Before you agree to something, even something small, just take a pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this from love or from fear of disappointing someone? The author Paulo Coelho said, when you say yes to others, make sure you are not saying no to yourself. Number 2, practice owning your feelings. Start noticing when you hide your real opinions just to keep the peace. It's not just about being a yes person, it's about honoring your voice, even if you choose not to speak it out loud yet. Number 3, give yourself what you seek from others. If you're craving love, care, or validation, check in with yourself first. Sometimes we expect others to give us what we're not even giving ourselves. Number 4, redefine what being kind looks like. Being nice often means allowing disrespect to avoid discomfort. Being kind means honoring yourself and others with honesty and compassion. As Byron Katie says, it's not your job to like me, it's mine. Think about it this way. Healthy compromise comes from a place of strength and choice. You weigh your needs against the situation and consciously decide that in this moment, flexibility serves the greater good. Fawning comes from fear. You're not making a choice, you're reacting to avoid a perceived threat. See the difference there? And number 5, celebrate every tiny step. Every time you honor your true self or your true no, even in a small way, celebrate it. Give yourself credit for noticing. This is how you build self-trust, one choice at a time. You don't have to fix a lifelong pattern overnight, but you can begin by noticing, by honoring one feeling at a time, one decision at a time, one tiny boundary at a time. And the goal isn't to stop caring about others or to voice every thought and feeling that you have. We don't need to do that. Sometimes holding your tongue is the wisest, most compassionate choice. The goal is to make these choices consciously from a place of inner strength rather than out of fear or habit. Healing from people-pleasing isn't about building walls. It's about building stronger, more loving connection with yourself. You are allowed to have needs. You are allowed to have preferences. You are allowed to protect your peace. You're allowed to own your own power. And every small moment you choose your truth, even if it's just silently honoring it inside yourself, you're rewriting your story, one brave breath at a time. You got this. Hey, thanks for listening today. And if you know somebody who could use some help in this people-pleaser area, please share this episode with them, and I hope it'll be helpful for them as well. Have a great day, keep shining, and I'll see you next week.